Introducing Scott Ritter's YouTube channel, a platform dedicated to discussing the Russian-Ukrainian conflict. Scott Ritter, an expert in international relations, provides in-depth analysis and commentary on the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine. With his extensive knowledge and first-hand experience, Scott Ritter offers unique insights into the historical background, geopolitical complexities, and humanitarian aspects of the conflict. Join his channel to gain a comprehensive understanding of the crisis, including its impact on regional stability and global politics. Through well-researched and balanced content, Scott Ritter's YouTube channel serves as a valuable resource for anyone interested in delving deeper into the Russian-Ukrainian war.
Today, an indictment was unsealed, charging Donald J. Trump with felony violations of our national security laws, as well as participating in a conspiracy to obstruct justice. This indictment was voted by a grand jury of citizens in the Southern District of Florida, and I invite everyone to read it in full to understand the scope and the gravity of the crimes charged. The men and women of the United States intelligence community and our armed forces dedicate their lives to protecting our nation and its people. Our laws that protect national defense information are critical for the safety and security of the United States, and they must be enforced. Violations of those laws put our country at risk. Adherence to the rule of law is a bedrock principle of the Department of Justice, and our nation's commitment to the rule of law sets an example for the world. We have one set of laws in this country, and they apply to everyone.
The law is an extremely potent weapon. It can put you in a cage. It can deprive you of your liberty. It can seize your assets. It can even, in some cases, take your life. And so in order for the law to be accepted in a society that the government has the power through force to come and take you and put you in a cage, it needs to have credibility as law. It needs to be something other than just a brute weapon that's used against political enemies. And the only way to ensure that the law has credibility is if it's applied consistently and universally and not selectively.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome. Sorry for that rough opening. Welcome to Scenes from the Evolution. I'm Jeff Norman, joined by Tori Mansfield and Arkady Itkin. We'll be joined in a few minutes by former UN weapons inspector Scott Ritter. Some of you may be familiar with him because we're going to be taking a look at Vladimir Putin, and in particular a speech he made in 2021. But we start with Donald J. Trump, who once again is interesting. There you see it. That's why I put those two clips together. One side of the argument is, well, he apparently broke the law. He's not above the law. There's strong evidence. There's a case against him. That's said by people who aren't suffering from Trump derangement syndrome, by the way. People like Andy McCarthy and Jonathan Turley say it's a pretty strong case. In particular, they've got his attorneys testifying under subpoena. So that's one side of it. The other side of it is, well, they've weaponized the justice system against him. They're coming at him from all sides. And that's the backdrop. And whichever side you're on, I don't know how you can how you can deny that it's interesting. To me, Trump was looking like a stale oldies act for a while. You know, the thing that excited me, and I've talked to Tori about this quite a bit, when he first came onto the scene, he was this class traitor. He was like, you know, my cousin Vinny goes to Washington. And it was just hilarious and exhilarating to watch him take down all these Republican hacks one by one, this guy who really never was in politics previously. And it was funny and it was new, it was fresh. But at this point, you know, we kind of seen it all. However, I think he's getting interesting again because Trump is a comedian. I mean, that's not all he is. He's a hybrid. But one part of his act, shall we say, is he's really a comedian. He's really a good comedian, maybe even a great comedian. Not like Jerry Seinfeld. Jerry Seinfeld and most comedians, they can draw on all kinds of life experiences for what they find is funny. Trump draws only from the political world. he finds what's absurd that's going on in his mind, and he makes jokes about it. People say he's not a comedian. Well, thousands of people come and see him, and they laugh a lot. I say by that definition, he's a comedian. But because he works in that way, where he depends on certain events and finding something that's absurd only in the political arena, there are going to be times when there's not much for him to goof on. But now there's something for him to react to. So what do you guys think? Are you on the side of, well, it looks like he broke the law, or if he did, prosecute him, or are you saying, well, now we got to stand by him because they've weaponized the justice system against him?
I'm in the they've weaponized the justice system against him camp.
And so it doesn't matter to you if he violated the law with these documents.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Okay, that's an honest answer.
Mhm.
And I think it's legitimate to say, well, this is political warfare. They've waged political warfare against him, and why shouldn't he be able to play dirty?
Yeah, it's
Right?
sort of like missing the, what is it, the forest for the trees, or the trees for the forest, whatever it is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Russiagate and all the different hoaxes trying to impeaching him because he said vaguely to Zelensky, hey, it'd be nice if you investigated Biden. What do you think, Arkady? You're the attorney here. Bring us down to earth.
So, yes, guys, I hate to speculate on whether there is sufficient basis, whether the intentions are genuine or not. I also tend to lean toward the weaponization theory, but I very much agree with what Paul Wolf says. Prosecutors can prosecute whoever they want. They do have unfettered discretion. They can choose what to go after at the expense of many other serious issues, and that's what they've been doing lately. So it's hard to not look at it as a conspiracy. Okay, so you have a few boxes. I understand it's a serious violation. You put them in stupid places, probably for a stupid reason. Did you really share those documents? Did you disclose them to our enemies, to our adversaries? Until I hear something like that, that does look like weaponization to me.
Trump gave 2 speeches in Georgia yesterday. One of them was in front of the Georgia GOP convention, and he called Jack Smith deranged. I know this is going to shock you that he's resorted to name calling so soon.
Trump is indicted and they take one charge and they turn it into 36 charges. You saw that. Everybody was amazed. Lawyers on television, yes, they're not usually the best lawyers, but some are very good. They're saying we've never seen anything like it. They took one charge and they made it 36 different times. And we have a thug who's in charge. This is a political hit job. Republicans are treated far differently at the Justice Department than Democrats. These are the same people who caused the lowest learner catastrophe. That's this deranged Jack. You know who I'm talking about. Jack Smith. What do you think his name used to be? I don't know. Does anybody ever? Jack Smith. Sounds so innocent. He's deranged.
Now, I call him a great comedian. I don't know if that's exactly great comedy or any part of this was great comedy, but sometimes he's unintentionally funny. Like here he is trying to make an issue out of the guy's name.
Well, and it's like
that's suspicious that his name is Jack Smith. I mean, that's too much. The other thing about this comedy analogy is that as a former comedian, I'm well aware of how comedians develop their act. So even though it wasn't like an A+ performance yesterday, comedians need time. All the well-known comedians go into the small clubs and they hone their material over a period of time before they take it on the road. So this is just the beginning of Trump going after Jack Smith, although he's been dealing with this topic for quite a while. I have a longer clip, not that long, but a little bit longer, which I think is a sneak preview of Trump's new act. Let's take a look at that.
Whole fake indictment. They don't even once mention the Presidential Records Act, which is really the ruling act, which this case falls under 100% because they want to use something called the Espionage Act. Doesn't that sound terrible? Oh, espionage. We got a box. I got a box. When I left office and was moving to Florida, boxes were openly sitting on the White House sidewalk. Everybody was taking pictures of them. This isn't somebody smuggling boxes out. Pictures of them you've all seen. It's sitting with people from GSA and other people waiting to put them on a truck. But they were literally sitting outside of the White House waiting for a truck to come. Then the truck come. It was there for a long time, and they put it in, and they brought it down to Florida, and they make it sound like it's a big, if that's a spy operation or if that's something bad, we did a very poor job, I will tell you. First thing you learn is don't put them on the sidewalk in front of the White House. But unlike me, who had absolute declassification authority as president, Biden didn't have any authority, and he had no right to possess those documents, none whatsoever. Yet nothing happened to Crooked Joe with all that many times what we have. And you know, there was an article recently that all presidents take documents out, they bring them out, all of them, virtually every one of them in fairly modern times.
So that's pretty much what the new act is going to be, I think. Crooked Joe.
Mm.
What do you think? Does that have legs? Can he revive the or repurpose the crooked disparagement?
I know it worked for Hillary.
Yeah.
And guys, I want to share, with your permission, a very powerful, and I wish Scott was here. He would appreciate a very powerful meme, with your permission, for just a second. And how can you ignore this?
Well, I don't know. Are we going to read your mind?
Oh, you cannot see that?
Oh, there it is. Okay. Started 10
Right.
wars, kept papers. Yeah.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Very underwhelming, the charges.
and
Oh.
guys, we all know that theoretically, when you drive on the road, you can be punished for speeding 10 times a day. So they take advantage of the fact that they can stick to theory, stick to letter of the law in theory, and make it look like this is a big deal. Whether it is or not, it's hard for us to know. It's hard for us to tell, but it's always possible to do that, to focus on someone, to laser focus on someone and go after them, especially if there is a huge motive behind it.
Yeah, and it's so disingenuous to say, oh, he's not above the law. Because just to stick with your analogy of a traffic violation, it's one thing if a cop happens to see you speeding or going through a red light or whatever it is. It's quite another if millions of dollars and all kinds of manpower is devoted to looking at videotapes for like 2 years to try to find the traffic violation. That's a big difference between discovering a crime and prosecuting the person versus deciding right up front, we're going to get Trump on something. That's the name of Alan Dershowitz's book, Get Trump. Perfect title. That's exactly what they decided to do. But on the other hand, I don't know, maybe these documents are important. You know, a lot of people who know about these things say that there's a lot of over-classification in Washington. They've classified all kinds of things that don't really need to be classified. And maybe that's the case. What he took isn't all that important. The other side of it is, well, maybe these are very sensitive things and it's a big deal.
The other question is, why now? And not
Right.
why a year ago or 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Right. Can anything happen that prevents Trump from running for office? Like, what could happen that prevents him?
Nothing.
Nothing. Okay. So then what
Not
are they
in
doing?
a legal way, maybe in a practical way, but not in a legal way. And the other thing is, Trump could very well make this his top issue and say that he will pardon himself if he's elected. So you must elect me. He also could be pardoned by any other president, too. So that might be why he doesn't seem to be sweating all that much. Because first of all, is he going to be convicted? I'll take Andy McCarthy's and Jonathan Turley's word for it that he's in serious trouble here. But will he be convicted? How long will it take? And if he is convicted, is he really going to go to prison, or is he going to be pardoned by either himself or someone else?
Can't believe this is. Yeah.
I told you it's interesting.
Yeah.
Don't stress out, Tori. He's not.
I'm not stressing. There's been so much that's happened over the past, since 2016. It's hard to stress too much about stuff.
But we can all agree if they put handcuffs on him this week, it's going to be the biggest simultaneous orgasm on the left that you've ever seen, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hey, Scott.
Hello, Scott.
What a concept to enter the conversation on.
Simultaneous orgasm. We were talking about Donald Trump before we get into the topic we're going to discuss with you, Scott, and the indictment, and how one side of it is, well, it looks like they've got some strong evidence he broke the law. And the other side of it is, well, so what? They've weaponized the justice system against him, selective enforcement. Even if they've got the goods on him, they shouldn't nail him. Before we get into our scheduled topic, do you have any take on the Trump indictment? I know sorry to catch you off guard. I know we didn't prepare it, so no problem if you haven't thought about it.
I think we're in a very dangerous time in this country, where we have deep divisions ideologically that have eliminated what would the framework of normal rational discussion and discourse about issues. I believe that the fundamental notion that no man or woman is above the law is a absolutely essential part of American society. And the moment that we allow any individual to believe they can operate without fear of recourse to the law, especially government officials, we slide dangerously away from where we're supposed to be. Having said that, we have to balance this with the notion that justice is indeed blind, and that that politicians can't weaponize the justice system for their, for political benefit. And here we have a situation where a case, and I'll say, I'm not a lawyer. I'll yield to lawyers on many issues. Some I won't, and Jeff knows which ones I won't. But
it's a third rail topic, Scott.
But the fact of the matter is this, and I know this as a former intelligence officer: the President of the United States is the highest level of declassification authority. Nobody is above the president on this, not even the Constitution. The Constitution, as interpreted by the Supreme Court, clearly says that the President of the United States is the ultimate thing. So if the president decides that the only way to declassify information is to stand on your head, pick your nose, eat it 3 times, and sing the Hallelujah chorus, that becomes the law. The president is the only authority on this. So if the President of the United States wakes up one morning and says, holy crap, I just declassify everything. Now, Congress might decide to impeach. That's a political process without any law. And Congress might be able to say, we deem you insane, therefore we shall seek to impeach you. But that's the only recourse you have, because the president gets to do whatever the hell he or she wants to do with classified information. They can declassify it on the spot. On the spot. The president can be in a briefing and turn around and have a top secret code word document and say, bullshit, give that to the press, and there's not anything you can do about it. There are lawyers out there, and I don't like lawyers, I'm sorry, but who will say, Mr. President, you must adhere to past precedent and this. Not when you're the President of the United States dealing with classified information. There is no such thing as past precedent. And ultimately, I believe this will go to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court will reverse on issues of classification, because the president is the sole authority or the utmost authority when it comes to this. He can do whatever the hell he wants to do. Now, people will read the indictment and say, yes, but he held up this, and yes, he held up that. That's where lawyers and the judges will come in. I ultimately believe that this is a politicized prosecution over a nothing burger, a giant nothing burger. People say, oh, the information. Ladies and gentlemen, let me wake you up to a reality. Every single piece, talk, Walter, shut up. He did declassify the documents. All he has to do is freaking think about it. All he has to do is think about it as president.
Well, let me just point out what, let me just point out what's a fact and what isn't. It's a fact that there is no established procedure for declassifying the documents. That is a fact. So that's an issue for the courts to decide. Did Trump have some obligation to kind of improvise some process? Is there some custom or something like that? That's the argument that the government
There's
can
no
make.
argument there, Jeff.
Well, I
The
didn't say it
Supreme
was.
Court has
I didn't say
spoken.
it was. I didn't say it was a strong argument. I'm saying
There's no argument. The Supreme Court has spoken. How can you make an argument when the Supreme Court has said this is it?
you're conflating me just simply saying what they're going to argue with it being a good argument. I'm just saying that's what they're going to contend.
Of course, they politicize
yeah.
the justice
And that's the
system.
only thing they can contend. I'm basically agreeing with you.
But my whole thing on this is the idiots that are pursuing this, and I will call every liberal in America who's gleefully looking at this an idiot. You are basically saying you want this country to devolve into a left-right schism that could manifest itself violently. Okay, I'm not advocating for this. I'm somebody who believes that we should all come together. We should believe in America, even when we have differences. There are ways that historically we have worked through these differences. Especially
You're right. No, yeah, they're playing with fire. I was making light of it before, saying that, well, now it's interesting, now it's entertaining. But the flip side of that is, Trump is going to be front and center. This is going to be the issue now. He's going to fire people up. And from the point of view of the people who are trying to take him down, it's a very iffy strategy from their point of view. They might take him down, or they might get him elected,
Well,
I mean,
I will tell you right now,
somebody you, for example, somebody you respect is already coming to Trump's defense here. Your fellow veteran.
Right.
Yeah.
But here's the other thing too. Trump is the Republican candidate. Whether you wanted it or not, there's no one out there right now that can touch Donald Trump. Not a single one. And I will also tell you this, if you're a Republican candidate and you're not rallying behind Trump on this issue, your base is going to, unless you come from a unique district that has, some sort of liberal bias towards Republicans, and there are some districts out there that exist like that, you've just made Donald Trump the Republican candidate. And I have to tell you, I'm not happy about that because, as Jeff knows, I'm not thrilled with Donald Trump on many issues. But I will tell you this. If Donald Trump goes toe-to-toe with Joe Biden in the 2024 election, I ain't voting for Joe Biden. All right? It's not that I want to vote for Donald Trump, but I'll take Donald Trump with all his many flaws over Joe Biden every single day of the year. And I'll also tell you this. As bad as you think Donald Trump was, did he arrest Hillary Clinton?
Nope.
Did he weaponize the Justice Department to arrest any of his political opposition? He badmouthed them. That's what Donald Trump does. He wakes up in the morning, thinks about how to make up names for his political opponents. That's his thing. I don't like it. But he didn't weaponize the Department of Justice.
Well, as I said before you joined us, Scott, he was on the phone with Zelensky, and he just vaguely said, hey, it would be nice if you would investigate Biden. That was blown into an impeachable offense. And compare that to what Biden.
It would have been nice if they investigated Biden. Biden is as dirty as the day is long on Ukraine. The amount of money that flowed between Ukraine and the Biden,
And Zelensky said he didn't take it as a threat or any kind of ultimatum. He didn't in fact investigate Biden, but they turned it into an impeachable offense because Vindbag, remember Vindbag, who they packaged as a whistleblower, even though it wasn't a secret that Ukraine didn't get the money. That's what brought him down. All right. Well, anyway, let's turn our attention to Trump's lover, Vladimir Putin, as some would say. That was what was scheduled today. This is a Arkady Itkin idea. Arkady, who's from Russia, said, let's get acquainted with Putin. And he zeroed in on a particular speech that Putin made at the Valdai Discussion Club, which I guess is some sort of a think tank in Russia. Why did you pick this? I mean, it's sort of arbitrary, and there's nothing wrong with being arbitrary because you got to start somewhere. Why did this appeal to you as the place to start for the purpose of acquainting ignorant Americans with Vladimir Putin?
Well, I think that we all, including Scott, we like the mental exercise of listening to someone who has been labeled as a villain and trying to extract the pearls of wisdom, arguably timeless wisdom, from what they're saying, instead of just doing what everybody else is doing, dismissing them as villains, enemies, and all that. And especially when it comes to this type of speech. Also, it's fascinating how much outsiders know about our internal issues, about our internal struggles. And if our supposed enemy knows so much about us, it's really worth listening to what he has to say.
Yeah, that is interesting. I always confess my ignorance. And there's a lot of Americans who are just as ignorant as I am. So I feel like I'm sort of a surrogate for the ignorant Americans sometime when I talk to Scott. And so that's one part of it. But what you like that?
Also, Scott treats Munich's speech of Putin as an addendum to Bible. So he really
I like how Scott
appreciates
laughed at
it.
that. Don't you think that's a fair way to characterize my role with you, Scott? I'm the surrogate for the ignorant American, the ugly American, even.
Well, Jeff, I would take umbrage at that because sometimes I vie for that title as well. I like to think of myself as open-minded, but I am fully cognizant of the fact that I am American to the core, and that comes with a lot of pluses and that comes with a lot of negatives. You know.
All right.
Also, one other reason, these speeches are a reminder to us how much better off we would be if our politicians were a fraction as smart, eloquent, and knowledgeable as some of these guys in Russia.
Yeah.
All right, so we posted this, well, it's actually a portion of the speech, not the whole speech. It's about 9-10 minute segment of the speech on our YouTube channel last week, and we invited our audience to watch it so that they would know what we're talking about, and this conversation would be more meaningful to them. And I saw several thousand people watched it, several hundred people commented, so hopefully a bunch of those people are in fact watching now. Let's take a clip. Take a look at a clip from that speech.
By the way, the Bolsheviks also showed absolute intolerance to any other opinions. This, in my opinion, should remind us something of what we are seeing now. Looking at what is happening in a number of Western countries, we learn with amazement domestic practices, which, fortunately, we ourselves left, I hope, in the distant past. The struggle for equality and against discrimination turns into aggressive dogmatism on the verge of absurdity when the great authors of the past, such as Shakespeare, are no longer taught in schools and universities. Because these ideas, are considered backward there. The classics are declared backward, not understanding the importance of gender or race. In Hollywood, they release memo how and what to make a movie about, how many characters, and what color or gender there should be. It turns out worse than the agitation and propaganda department of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union.
An example of my ignorance, by the way, is that I'm not really all that familiar with the Bolsheviks. And I always hear conservatives who are, critical of the left calling them Bolsheviks. And it's like, well, if you're going to use a derogatory term, it's going to work only with the people who understand the reference. Let's ask Tori, are you familiar with the Bolsheviks? Do you get anything out of that when you hear people calling leftists in America Bolsheviks?
What comes to mind is the Soviet Union in the revolution, right? Like they were the working class, right? Is that correct?
Yeah. But do you get what the analogy is to call leftists Bolsheviks? I mean, I don't quite get
Communists?
that. Mm-hmm. Well, Putin seems to be characterizing them as intolerant. Arkady, Scott, can you shed a little insight on what this analogy means?
I think we first all have to understand that, back in the revolution, you had a couple, what we call Marxist-Leninist party. One was the Mensheviks. That means the small party. They were actually the big party. Then you had the Bolsheviks, the big party. They were actually